Saccidātmanyanusyūte nitye viṣṇau prakalpitāḥ Vyaktayo vividhāḥ sarvā hāṭake kaṭakādivat. All the manifested world of things and beings are projected by imagination upon the substratum, which is the eternal, all-pervading viṣṇau, whose nature is existence intelligence. Just as the different ornaments are all made out of the same gold. In the previous verse, we learned that the world is like a bubble of water. Just as the bubbles of water emerge, sustain, burst, and fall back in water, all the creation is just but illusion on Brahman, and Brahman is a substratum of all the names and forms. Shankara explains this further in this shloka. In this verse, as in the previous verse, we have another set of three words, at once taking our minds beyond the three limitations experienced by all individual beings, concluding with a simile designed to focus our minds on the single all-pervading reality, viṣṇau, of reality of the self, that is viṣṇau, all-pervading. The limitations of the projected world as given subtly in this verse. There are three expressions which give the nature of the substratum, and corresponding to these three expressions there are three limitations which we all know, nevertheless which will be recapitulated here. There are these three expressions. Anusyūte, it is projected on the all-pervading Atman. All-pervasiveness is the main here. Nitye, on the eternal Atman. Eternal is the main essence here. viṣṇau, and upon viṣṇau, the Lord, who is their substratum. Now, using these three words has the following deeper significance. How? There are three Deshakala Vastu, are the three limitations which we have gone through in the Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahman talk, and in many talks till now. Okay. How these three expressions, three limitations of Deshakala Vastu, Desha, limitation of space, Kala, limitation of time, vastu, limitation of objects. How these three are negated in the expression of Brahman in this verse beautifully. Let us see. Anusyūte, the all-pervasiveness. This negates the limitation of object, vastu. When something is all-pervading, it cannot be limited by any object. Nitye, the eternal, negates kala, the limitation of time. When one is eternal, nityam, then it is not possible to limit it by time, in the sense it was there during this time and it is not during the other time. It is not possible. So the nitya, the description of Brahman as nitya, the expression of Brahman as nitya, negates the limitation of kala. viṣṇau, the omnipresent, negates the limitation of desa, that is the limitation of space. When viṣṇau, the Brahman, is omnipresent, then there can be no limitation of Brahman existing in one space, one part of the space, and not existing in the other part of the space. Now coming to the simile. By describing the world as a projection upon the self, the essential truth we see is the world is fluctuating show of objects upon a substratum that is common to every object. This comes out remarkably accurately in the simile chosen in this verse by Adi Shankara. What is the simile? Gold ornaments are innumerable, but the gold is common in all of them. A person goes to a jeweler shop and offers to sell his ornaments when he is in distress. There is a necklace and there is a Ganesha idol which he gives to the jeweler and asks him to value and take them accordingly for the value agreed. The jeweler gives a per tola rate for both ornaments. The seller is hurt. He says, Ganesha is much more valuable. How you can attribute the same per tola rate to the necklace as well as Ganesha? The jeweler replies, Sir, it may be of immense value to your sentiments, but for me both are essentially one thing, gold. In this simple yet superb simile, we get an exact idea of how a sage of realization sees this world. As a goldsmith also sees the ornaments but sees the gold more clearly, so too the sage also sees the world but sees the underlying self more clearly. By now we are clear about the three causes. We need not get into detail, the material, efficient and instrument cause. Okay. For example, in the case of the creation of a pot, the mud is the material cause, the potter's wheel or the stick is the instrumental cause, and the potter's imagination of how to make the mud is the efficient cause. From the previous example, we have learned that all the creations are like bubbles of water, and the only reality is Brahman. The Brahman becomes the material and efficient cause of all the creation. Here, the objects created are not different from the Creator. Just like our shadow cannot claim a separate existence, our shadow is never created, but it just appears to be. That is why we can neither say that the creation is real, nor can we say that the creation is unreal. Just like we cannot say our shadow is real or unreal. So, scriptures call this creation accordingly as nitye. Neither real nor unreal, but just apparent. Everything is made of 5 elements: space, air, fire, water and earth. And having created thus, they veil us from realizing Brahman. Differences are but diversity. They all appear different, but the foundation, the substratum is Brahman. We can also here note that just as how nothing happens to the gold when the gold ring goes out of shape or is melted, so too when there are changes in this world, the eternal reality remains the same. It is ever changeless, immutable. The names and forms associated with various ornaments seems to distinguish them from gold. They are all changeable and are all hence unreal. Even when the names and forms undergo changes, the gold remains the same as it is. Let us summarize the comparison between the golden ornament on the one side and the Brahman and apparent world on the other side. Number 1. The various ornaments are but gold. Gold is the material cause of all the ornaments. Similarly, the world is but a creation of the mind on Brahman. Brahman is the cause and the world is the effect. Nothing happens to the gold even when the gold ring goes out of shape, we heard. Similarly, to repeat the same, as we have already told before, when there are changes in the world, the eternal reality remains the same. It is changeless. And similarly, we have already covered that the names and forms are associated with different objects of the world. They appear to be different from Brahman. However, when the names and forms undergo change, the substratum remains as it is. Brahman is changeless substratum. In meditation, when the mind becomes still and quiet, there can sometimes be a connection with this underlying and unchanging existence. It is not possible to see the unchanging existence just with the eyes or hear it just with the ears, or touch it just with hands. In addition, we can say, or beyond our senses, mind, intellect, body, there must be wisdom, discrimination. Wisdom is gained only by viveka, discrimination. You see, it seems so convincing to understand that yes, all ornaments are but gold. Similarly, it is so clear, Acharya, that all the variety of names and forms in the creation is but one reality, Brahman, who appears in so many varieties in macrocosm and microcosm. In this nature, as well as amongst all living beings. So convinced. But the satsang gets over, the sadhaka wears his slipper and goes out and sees the world, and he or she sees only varieties, and he or she immediately start differentiating between one human being and the other human being. Starts with the background of his or her vasanas, likes someone, does not like the other. Likes certain things in the world, certain objects in the world, does not like certain other objects in the world. And then the desire for the objects which they like, that come up, that rush, and the desire spreads like the wildfire, and then the mind acts to possess the desired objects in any way, right or wrong, ethical, unethical, whatever way. So, it requires unwavering conviction, mananam stage, followed by intense spiritual sadhana, which is vividhāsana, to ultimately experience the self within. And then, and only then, only then, after having experienced the self within, after the eternal experience transcending the limitation of time and space sets in, and whereas an experience, a spark, a glimpse in the meditation, an experience is subject to limitation of time. You may get the experience now, you may miss the experience after some time. But this experience culminates ultimately as the fructification of relentless sadhana as existence. Experience is bound by time. Existence is not bound by object or time or space. And then only one really exists as gold, as the pure self. See, till now, we were talking about the gold and the ornament and compared it with Brahman substratum and the changing world, samsara. This is from a student's point of view, where there is duality, definitely, and the student is differentiating between the ornament and the gold. Likewise, the student also is differentiating between the samsara, the multitude of names and forms, with the changeless substratum, Brahman, nameless, formless, attributeless. But what happens when the student, sitting at the feet of his guru, the realized master, undergoes all spiritual instructions and ultimately on one day, at 1 second, or at 1 secondless second, realizes the self. And the realization is irreversible. He cannot ever go back now from this discovered self that he himself is. Then what happens? The gold will never go about shouting or arguing in the bazaar that, look, I am the eternal substratum. All ornaments of different types, different varieties which you are seeing in these jeweler shops, they are all made out of me. The gold will never have the motivation or any idea or any will to go about telling this, announcing this. Similarly, a realized seer never goes about claiming that he is pure self. And hence, though his eyes may see variety of names and forms, still he does not differentiate between various names and forms, as all the varieties in this world come, touch him, hug him, get sanctified, and in turn exist as changeless self in his bosom. See, you have to be very clear. As far as a realized seer's eyes or ears or his senses, his faculty is concerned, it sees or hears or smells or tastes all the varieties in this world, just like any other jiva smells or hears or touches or sees, mainly seeing, sees so many varieties in this world. But the jiva believes that the variety in the names and forms, the hundreds of different people, like different types, shapes of waves, different sizes of bubbles, different types of human beings, physically different, mentally, emotionally different, nature-wise different human beings, the jiva believes that these differences are in fact real and existing, and accordingly suitable to his own or her own sanskara or vasanas. The jiva goes about liking certain human beings and not liking certain other human beings. Liking those human beings which, as per their impressions or as per their own impressions about their own nature, these human beings fall into their territory, category of liking. So they like them. Okay. Whereas a Jivan Mukta sees the varieties, cannot escape seeing the variety of names and forms. But what is the one major differentiating factor between him and the other Jiva? The Jivan Mukta has no vasanas, no impressions. So without any impression, even when the multitude of names and forms appear and dance and move around in front of him, he doesn't do anything. That is why the expression was used. You have to visualize, you have to imagine and see and experience the beauty of this visualization, as if the multitude of names and forms, they approach him like the Menaka tried to distract Vishwamitra. They try to attract his attention. They try to bring in ripple in his thoughts as a disturbance. And they try to invoke his vasanas and they fail miserably. And so they prostrate and they touch, they hug and they disappear in his bosom. And he, exactly as the gold, he exists as changeless, pure Saccidātmanyanusyūte. One glimpse of the pure self. One glimpse means one eternal experience of the self with absolutely no play of mind, no imagination, no thought process. Such a glimpse, such a self-awareness is way beyond, unimaginably way beyond 50 years of blabbering, 50 years of talks, writings, reading of scriptures at intellectual level. Go beyond what you have learned through scriptures from your Guru and arise, awake, stop not till the goal is reached. And the goal is to exist as gold, as substratum self. Hari Om.